collectors, and welcome to another Bossk Bounty video, and welcome to episode 211 of Ask Bossk Bounty. This is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I take your questions from the comment section below and do my very best to answer them. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, be sure to leave that question in the comment section of this video. I just want to apologise for the lack of episode last Sunday, but of course I was doing the live stream for the March Madness, completing the bracket, where we had a bit of a surprise winner. If you haven't watched that live stream, it was a lot of fun. I do recommend you watch it. It was pretty good. It was really good fun having the guys on. John from the Vintage Concepts, or SWTVC, and Only One Kenobi, and my buddy Chris as well. It was a good stream with a controversial ending. Shall we just leave it there? So let me know if you enjoyed this video by hitting the like button. Thanks so much for watching, and let's get on to the first question. And the first question is from channel member Shannon Patratz. And before I get on to the question, I just want to say a huge thank you to Shannon, because they sent me this, and it arrived last week completely by surprise. I had no idea that this was being sent, and Shannon is obviously a very talented artist, and I would read out the note that came with this, but I want to save that for a pickups video. But I just wanted to say a big shout out in this video, just so Shannon, you know, was wondering if I'd received it or not yet. Basically, I have received it. I think it's absolutely awesome, and receiving things like this, you know, makes doing the channel all worthwhile. It's, you know, it's worthwhile anyway. It's a hobby of mine. I really do enjoy it, talking to you guys and everything. But to receive things like this from what is clearly a very talented artist is just unbelievable. And I'm privileged. I'm very lucky. So thank you so much, Shannon. And Shannon says, another great Sunday afternoon with Bossk. With all the talk of a new TVC HasLab, I've been thinking of vintage Kenner vehicles that have not been released in the modern era. One in particular that comes to mind is the Rebel Transport. While I know this would be another huge vehicle, this could be a great HasLab with loads of play features and accessories. It may be a pipe dream of mine, but I'd love to see an updated version of this vehicle. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I've actually got a very short story about the Rebel Transport. So my next door neighbour, we were very good friends at the time, similar age, into Star Wars, and he knew where his Christmas presents were being hidden before obviously the big day. And he showed me, he opened up this cupboard and said, look, I think I'm getting this for Christmas. And it was the ATAT. And I was like so jealous. I was like, oh wow, that is unbelievable. I hope I get something like that for Christmas. And one of my Christmas presents, one of my main Christmas presents that year, was the Rebel Transport. And I've got to say, compared to the ATAT, I was a little bit disappointed. Of course, you should always appreciate the things you get as presents. I enjoyed it. It was a great carry case for your figures and things like that, and I had a lot of enjoyment out of it. But when you kind of compare that to the ATAT, I think you can only be a little bit disappointed. But I'm not too sure about it being redone in the modern era. I'm not too sure how much play features you could actually get out of that. I mean, they weren't used that much in the film, were they really? I know the original one had all the play features because, as I said, you could use it as a carry case for your figures and things like that. But don't get me wrong, I'm like you, I appreciate the Rebel Transport. I think it's a cool looking vehicle. But yeah, when I just compare it to other things that they could do, I don't know, perhaps not. But I like the nostalgia that you have it for it, Shannon, anyway. Damien Addington says, hello there, BB. Excellent video as always. Question for next week. In view of the upcoming 40th anniversary of the original Star Wars The Power of the Force collection, what do you think are the odds on Hasbro bringing back the special collector's coins? Thank you in advance. I'm not too sure about the odds on it, but I think that they should. I was originally in the camp where I thought that the only one of those should be the Yak Face, because that was special. That came with the barge. But as you say, it's the 40th anniversary next year, isn't it, of Power of the Force? So it would be nice to get some more of those. And I think what they should do is perhaps reissue some of the figures that we've already got, such as Luke Skywalker in his Stormtrooper outfit on that Power of the Force card with the coin. Do a few of those and then use the money that they generate from that to pay for all new sculpts like EV99 that came out on that Power of the Force card. They could even use Kithaba, parts of Kithaba, to bring the Barada figure out as well. There's a couple of Ewoks as well on Power of the Force that they could do with the coins. A new A-Wing pilot. So I don't think that they need to use all new sculpts to get some of those figures out. There's plenty that they could get out on a card with a coin. Another one is the Han Solo and Carbonite, and use some of the money that they're going to be generating from that. You know, they're not having to pay anything out. Essentially, there's no new tooling or anything like that, no new design. and give us some of the figures that we haven't already got from the Power of the Force with the coins, as I say, like EV99. That's personally what I think they should do. I'm not too sure if they will even respect the anniversary, but I hope they do. Django Mall says, hi Tim, question for next week. If you could create a Star Wars character, what occupation would he or she have and which planet would be their home world? And mine would be a Zabrak bounty hunter with Django style armor and has the option of Force Lightning. Sounds like a pretty cool character to me. I think I'd have to go with, without being obvious and doing a Trandoshan, I'd have to go with a Kubaz, which is the Garandan race, I believe. I think that's how you say it, Kubaz. And mine would be a bounty hunter as well, and he would be on the streets of Coruscant, rounding up the scum and villainy. I think that'd look pretty cool. Zenga Fake says, question for next week. When do you think we'll see the next big event for pipelines, reveals in TVC? It's been over 3 months since I've opened a new figure and I'm itching to see something new. Well, hopefully you guys are going to be getting the new figures soon. They are starting to show up around the world. Some of my friends in New Zealand and Australia have the new wave. I have the new wave here. It's going to be around in the UK within the next week or so. So hopefully you're going to be getting those. But in terms of what's coming up, in terms of reveals, I think hopefully it'll be beginning of April we'll see something, because I think this month is pretty much booked out for Transformers. I saw that they're having a live stream every week for their 40th anniversary, so maybe Hasbro don't want to sort of have anything get in the way of that, possibly. But hopefully April, you know, we'll see something new. Some of the pipelines that we've already seen, hopefully we'll see those, like Leia. Hasbro, hello, we want to see Leia. Yeah, so hopefully in April. Starcolor says, question, hey BB, with Jabba the Hutt 88 and Salacious B Crumb being released later this year, and also a Droids 4-pack with Ahsoka, what are the chances of seeing an all-new Jabba's torture chamber with EV99 and other droids, some in the midst of being tortured? The droid torture chamber playset was a lot of fun as a kid, and it's a great way to get a lot more droids into TVC line, which many collectors want. What are your thoughts? I've got to say, you know, it would go very nicely with some of the other things that we have. With the Jabba's Palace, we've got the, you know, the Jabba's Adventure set with Han Solo on the wall as well. And the EV99, there's another way you can get money from that figure. Not only putting him on a Power of the Force card, but just put him on a standard Return of the Jedi card in a playset like that. You know, these are the sorts of things that I think Hasbro should think about. I don't think any of us are going to grumble about getting 2 EV99s if one's going to be on a Power of the Force and one's going to be on a standard Return of the Jedi card. You know, the standard Return of the Jedi card could be in the playset, and then you could put the other on the Power of the Force card in a wave, or a, I don't know, a Walmart exclusive wave or something. I don't know. However they do it, but there's plenty of ways that they can get these figures to us. Andrew Cook says, hey BB, it seems like in the last year Hasbro has been trying to address our desire for more vehicles, and hopefully they'll keep doing so. My question for next week, of the following options for the next small vehicle with a figure to be released, which would you most like to see, and which do you think is the most likely to be released by Hasbro? And the choices are an Ewok glider with one of the original 96 Ewoks that we're still missing, Cobb Vanth speeder with a slightly different version of Cobb Vanth and the one that's been pipelined, a Bark speeder with either a named clone like Kix, Clone Wars version, or Killer and Beck from Mandalorian Season 3, or Ezra's speeder that Sabine was riding in Ahsoka with an alternate version of Sabine to complete the scene with the E-Wing. Okay, so first of all, the one that I would like to see most out of those is probably Cobb Vanth speeder. I love the design, the way they've used part of a pod racer as the sort of main engine for it. Love the design for that. I think that would be really cool if we could get that. One that I think that they'd probably do out of those 4 would most likely be Ezra's speeder. I think it's up-to-date media. You know, as you say, we're getting the E-Wing. Lots of different characters could essentially ride one of those. They could repaint it a number of different ways. That's probably the one that I think is most likely. Out of those 4, I don't think they'll do any of them personally anytime soon, but out of the 4, that's the most likely, I would say. Rob Bullock says, Tim, thanks for all the great content and passion for the hobby. Question for next week. I've been avoiding buying the TVC 1.0 Wedge from Return of the Jedi because it seems outdated now. With the current X-Wing pilot Buck, do you think Hasbro might give us a new Wedge Antilles on a New Hope card? I'd even take him as a troop builder, as I'm almost exclusively an opener. Cheers. Yeah, so this is what slightly confused me about that reissue of the Luke Skywalker, because I think they could have easily, you know, used that body of the Luke Skywalker, which is a completely acceptable pilot Buck, and given us a different character, like even a new, as you say, even a new Wedge Antilles on a New Hope card. That would be far better than that Luke Skywalker, in my opinion. But of course, it's Luke Skywalker. It's probably going to sell more or whatever. And I know a lot of people had a few issues trying to get hold of the original figure, and there's some quality control issues around the original card back as well. That was at the time of them being super bendy. I think it was a Walmart exclusive, and a lot of them were damaged and things like that. But still, you know, like with all the different pilots that have got a body shape like Luke Skywalker, you could get away with a Wedge, no problem, or a Biggs. There's plenty that they could do. Will they do it? I'm not 100% sure now. Obviously, I think they might have missed that opportunity, but here's the Return of the Jedi version one, and I did put that out on my community tab for people that wanted to pick up that figure, because Dennis will be at Echo in the UK. So if you are going to Echo, Dennis Lawson will be there signing. So, you know, I saw a lot of people suddenly snapping the Wedge Antilles up to get theirs signed. Steve Martin says, hi Tim. Question for next week: how come we haven't had any carded figures from episode 3 in TVC 2.0, and do you think Hasbro will make a blue snaggletooth? Cheers, mate. Blue snaggletooth for me would only be included in some kind of exclusive or something like that, or some kind of like convention exclusive, like a fun set maybe. I think that's the only time that we'll ever see a blue snaggletooth, personally. And as for episode 3, yeah, that is the great question, isn't it? Why haven't we had any episode 3 in TVC 2.0? I guess the sensible answer is that we've had so much other media to get through and what have you. I think we had one clone, didn't we? The 41st, I think it was, Elite. But obviously that was just a repaint of the skinny clone that we've had so many times before. But yeah, we haven't had anything new in particular. Now, next year is the anniversary, is it not, of Revenge of the Sith? So next year would be the year to do it. You know, we could do with a new Anakin, we could do with a new Obi-Wan. There's plenty of other characters that we need from that film that we haven't got yet. We've got the new clone sculpt. So, you know, maybe they could get some of the captains or commanders out and what have you. So hopefully they'll address it next year. Vel von Cryptlord says, hey Tim, thanks for another week of videos. What would be your perfect wave of 6 characters for TVC? And to make things spicier and more interesting, you can use each show movie once. So every figure would have to be from a different media. I would love to see your list from this point in time. Okay, so to help me out with this, I'm going to be using my top 25 submissions that I put in for March Madness, because at the end of the day, those are the 25 figures that I most want in the line. So I'm going to pick one from each media that I would like them to do, to add up to 6 in a wave. So first off, I'd go for Luthen from Andor. I would go for Baze Malbus from Rogue One. Luke Skywalker, Tatooine from Star Wars A New Hope. Then I would go the Snowtrooper from Empire Strikes Back. And then this one's a bit tricky now, because I can either go with Anakin from Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, I'm going to pick Anakin from Revenge of the Sith, an all new Anakin. And then, what do I go for my 6th one? It's between Mon Mothma from Return of the Jedi or Ki-Adi-Mundi from Attack of the Clones. And I think I'm going to have to go with Mon Mothma. So there you go. There's my 6. Nino Brown says, question for next week. Finished watching Andor again. I badly want a prisoner supervisor. My question, what's your thoughts on a prisoner playset consisting of the workstation, rack and several Death Star joint products? They can include a carded supervisor, Kino, and they can use the mold to create a 4-pack and Andor, One Way Out. Yeah, I mean, as much as I love that sort of arc of Andor, and I love Andor all the way through, what a great series that is. I've got to say, the figure itself for a prisoner is, I don't know, maybe on the boring side. I would hate for them to release one of those just on its own, like Kino Loy on a card back by himself, and then have nothing else to go with it. That would be the worst possible thing. And I think there's probably other figures that I do want from Andor ahead of those, like some of the Imperial officers and things like that. The troopers, and you know, some of the things that the Black Series have already got, basically, I would love for them to do in TVC. However, if they were to do Kino Loy and Andor in their prisoner outfits, then yes, I think it needs to come in like a play set or a 4-pack, just so you can just basically get 4 prisoners, Andor, Kino Loy, and a couple of randos, basically, and that's the way to do it. You know, I just don't want them to do a Kino Loy on a card back and then that's it. You know, because as far as that figure is by itself with no accessories or a screwdriver or something, it's kind of on the boring side. But I can fully understand why you want it, Nino, because, you know, obviously the prison arc of Andor was really, really good. Owen Rogers says, greetings, question for next week. Has anyone suggested instead of doing a single Death Star HasLab, do multiple playsets of the Death Star that are stackable over the course of a few years? Maybe one per year. 1 year a Death Star briefing room, next year the prison detention area, the next year a trash compactor, the next year a hangar control room. All would be stackable and all large playsets to make a huge epic stacked playset. Each playset $200 and $250 per year, like Jabba's playset. Do you think the community would have the patience to build something like this over the course of a few years to get it as epic as it could be? Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't want those as HasLabs. They would have to be like Pulse exclusives, like the Jabba's playset, for that to work. $200 and $250 for like a briefing room or the prisoner detention. I think it's still too much. I think those playsets need to be maybe $100 and with one figure included, and then it will probably be worth doing, because you'd probably want maybe 5 or 6 areas of the Death Star, possibly, maybe more. So it'd end up getting quite expensive if they were like $200 to $250 each. And then you've got the problem if one bit came out that you didn't like or you didn't want or you couldn't afford at that point in time, then it might sort of ruin the whole aesthetic of the whole thing, or it might not put together properly. So there's definitely issues and concerns about doing it that way. And I can understand maybe if they have considered a Death Star as a HasLab, that would probably be a better way of doing it. But, you know, I don't think something like that is out of the question, where it's modular and things come out at different points in time. I think that's a totally acceptable way of doing something, but I just think it needs to be maybe something that's got less amount of parts, sort of maybe 3 or 4, and it's done maybe over a couple of years. Maybe you get 2 bits a year or something like that. Barada73 says, question for next week. Every time Hasbro adds a new level of articulation to a figure in TVC, doesn't that instantly make every figure that came before outdated in the articulation category? So at what point is there enough or even too much articulation in these figures? Or do you think there are still points of articulation they can add to new figures in TVC? Butterfly joints in the shoulders, articulated fingers and toes. Where does it end? So I can understand your question. Yes, I mean, obviously if you bring out a definitive Han Solo and he's fully articulated, then that will trump anything that's come before it. But I think that's just a natural progression. I do think, obviously, fingers and toes, that is going a little bit too far. But I think it depends on the character, essentially. You know, something like a clone needs lots and lots of articulation. You know, an astromech droid, not so much. So it does depend on what the character is. I think when it comes to what articulation is missing, for example, if you were to bring out a new Jedi sculpt or, you know, buck body, then, you know, butterfly joints in the shoulders would help massively in enabling the Jedi to hold the lightsaber properly in both hands. You know, something like that would actually help the character to achieve certain poses that it needs to. So, you know, I'm not for articulation's sake, and the fact that it's got God knows how many points of articulation. I think it goes on a figure-by-figure basis, basically. And this brings me to the great debate about reissues and whether a figure should be put on the same card back and all that kind of thing. And I'm just going to read out 3 questions from people that left comments last week, and then just kind of discuss my thoughts and give my opinion on it. So the first one is Honor2323, and he says, hey, question for next week. Do you think new collectors should get older figures like the Phantom Menace version of Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Darth Maul, or just wait until they make an updated newer version? And then you've got Mitchell Gum, who says, question for next week. I definitely want the Rebels Callas also, but I have to disagree with you slightly, Tim. General Veers should be the next big figure using that officer mould in TVC. He would look smashing on a proper Kenner card, but I definitely want Callas too. My question is, if they did release Veers, do you think they would re-release VC05 ATAC Commander around the same time, but use the updated officer mould? It would help newer collectors get VC05 into their collection without spending a ton on the secondary market. Or do you think it might not sell as well if you had Veers out at the same time? Personally, I would buy both. So this is like the argument around, you know, we've got this new officer sculpt and this card back should be updated with that new officer. And, you know, do I think maybe that should be a whole new card back with a whole new image, with a whole new number, and leave this one where it's at? And finally, we have Rob MC, and he says, hey Bossk, I've got a burning question for next week. Re-releases. Bossk, I'm a little jaded because as a very dedicated second gen in-box TVC collector, I've gone hunting for and paid reasonably high secondary prices for some of the more sought after figs cards. I'm fine with the hunt and the higher prices, it's part of collecting, from artwork to vehicles. Sports card collectors do the same thing. It's part of the fun, hunting, bartering, buying and reselling. Now if Hasbro says re-releases are for the new collector, here you go, we've made an updated figure and we put it on a better quality card back just for you new guys. Well, that implies disregard for the established on-card collector. Disregard for the collector that actually established the value of TVC. To my question, why weren't the obvious money grab re-release figures distributed on Black Series archive style card backs? I feel like archive-esque re-releases would have left room for us loyal carded collectors and also helps out all of the other collectors who open their figs and disregard the collectible cards but missed out on the original release. And why isn't it obvious that in 2024 this coming Luke Skywalker X-Wing pilot fig with a different scenes picture and a new VC number would have outsold any other release without alienating arguably the driving force behind the value of this line? It feels like selfish, poorly thought out greed from the boss of Hasbro's boss instead of anything else. Yeah, so this is what I wanted to talk about. I'm in the camp that if they have a new figure that's updated, like the Imperial Officer, for example, and they're going to be using it to make a new figure, like a new version of the Attack Commander / General Veers, then me personally, I would actually create a new card back for that one. Put him in the armour and everything, use that body, put him in the armour, but give him a new card back. Now, unfortunately, collectors that are coming into the line and want that specific card back, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because of course I do want them to have the opportunity to own that card back, but for me it's about the figures really, and I want them to make improvements on the figures, and I would love them to do a new Imperial Commander, whether it's General Veers or whatever, using that sculpt. So separately you could have a General Veers card back with him in his officer's outfit, but then you could update the Attack Commander. But for me, if you're updating the figure inside this bubble, then it has to be a new number on a new card, like they've done with other figures. The Luke Skywalker, again, you know, for me that one is exactly the same figure, so to me that kind of is a reissue. Should they have put that on a new card? I don't know, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. But I think when it's an all new figure, like a completely different figure to the one that was previously released, then it has to be on a new card back, and unfortunately it means that this particular card back doesn't get re-released. And I feel for both camps here. I feel for the people that want to get into the line and have the opportunity to buy these things, but I also do feel and take Rob MC's point in that a lot of the success of TVC is because of the carded collectors, and you know, the perceived value in those card backs in, you know, 10, 15 years time or whatever. People collect for different reasons, and yeah, that's just my kind of opinion on it really. I think it is a difficult subject because, you know, I don't think that these people collect 100% because they want to make a profit on something, but you know, it's a collectible. This is, as you mentioned about sports card collectors and things like that, it's all the same thing. People want the rare thing, the hard to get thing, and if you're coming into the line new, then often you want to go back and get those harder things. And the other point that I have on this subject is that I don't think Hasbro should re-release a figure just to get the figure and that card back out in the line if the figure is well out of date. You know, for example, Wedge Antilles is a good example because that body is no longer good enough. He's got the swivel hips. You know, you want Wedge Antilles, as we mentioned earlier, on that new Luke Skywalker body, essentially. So you get an all new Wedge. So anybody that's coming into the line that wants a Wedge Antilles gets a Wedge Antilles. They get a newer version of the figure on a new card back. It just means they can't earn this exact card back and figure combo. And I think maybe we kind of have to accept that. I don't know, because I don't think anybody really wants, you know, 15-year-old figures being re-released in the line just to get them out again. I don't really see the point in that. And finally, I know I'm rambling a little bit about this now, but it is kind of all over the place. But, you know, the archive-esque style releases to get a figure out there, I mean, that would be for the loose collectors only. And I think the whole pull of TVC is that vintage card back as well. So I don't really see the point, once again, getting an inferior, older figure and just sticking him on a archive card just to put him out there again. I just don't think they'll sell, to be honest, in 3.75. And that's just my opinion, but I'd love to know your opinions on it, because it is a bit of a sort of a contentious issue in the community, isn't it? About, you know, perceived value of things, and the argument between like, well, I'm a new collector and I want that. Why have I got to pay $100 on the secondary market for it? Why can't Hasbro re-release it? And then you've got the people on the other side of the fence that already own it, may already have paid $100 for it. And then Hasbro re-release it and their thing is suddenly worth $15 that they've paid $100 for. So I can see both sides. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. It's definitely a talking point for sure. I would definitely like to know your thoughts on it. Alright then guys, after that massive ramble, thank you so much for watching. If you do have a question for next week's episode, be sure to leave it in the comment section below. And also watch my reviews that are on the channel of the new, most latest wave that we have for the Vintage Collection, Dooku and the Phase 1 clone in particular. I did review Finn as well. He's out for my Patreon supporters at the moment, but he will be out on the channel in general later in the week. So thank you all for watching, and thank you to my Patreon supporters and channel members for the extra support. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we shall see you on the next one.